$20,000 per week. That is the approximate number that most bands have been paying to rent a tour bus in 2022. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Tank, and today we're going to be talking about how the price and availability of tour buses has been canceling tours this past year. And I'm actually going to show you on screen an actual estimate from a bus company that shows you what kind of charges are going into these bills. 2022 was the year that the entire music industry came back in full force after COVID, after the restrictions started being lifted. And everybody was stoked about it, man. The bands, the roadies, the fans, everybody knew it was going to be crazy. All of these bands were going to be on the road at the same time, and there were going to be shows everywhere. But I think the thing that nobody really thought about, or maybe a select few in the music industry actually thought about, was what kind of strain was going to be on the entertainment industry. And by that, I mean rentals and tour buses and gear and stuff like that. All of these bands on tour at the same time, this has never really happened like this before. And as we started to expect, we started seeing a lot of bands canceling really big tours because they couldn't find the staff or the gear rentals, or most often the bus rentals. Now, there's a lot of different ways that bands travel from show to show on tour. Most oftentimes, we're going to see vans and trailers, or bandwagons, or RVs. Or if you start getting to your mid and upper size bands, you're going to see tour buses. And I know there's probably some people already asking, well, if a band couldn't find a tour bus and they have to cancel a tour instead, why not just go down to a van and trailer or a bandwagon rather than cancel an entire tour? And it's a fair question, but it's got an easy answer, and it's usually just logistics. Sometimes the size of the band or the size of their crew and the gear that they're carrying can't fit into a van and trailer or a bandwagon and a trailer or anything other than a bus. And there are quite a few different ways that you can set up the configuration of a tour bus. And there are, just like cars, different models that have different heights in them and different bay space and stuff like that. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to be talking about a 12 bunk configuration. That means 12 people can ride on the bus, not including the driver because they don't have a bunk, they just drive. And I am aware that buses vary from country to country and parts of the world, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to be talking about the buses in North America, because while I have toured all over the world, North America is my home base of operations. These are the buses that I've spent the most time on, so I feel like it's just easier for me to talk about it in this sense. So going back to the space and how much stuff a band is carrying, sometimes a bus can be the only way that they can do things. Let's say there's a band that has 5 members and then they have 7 people in their crew. That means that's going to be a full bus. Every bunk is going to be taken up. And the buses are generally, pretty good about space, even with 12 people on them. I've been on many tours where we've had a full bus, or some tours where I've gotten lucky and I've only had like 7 or 8 people on it. But, you can always find somewhere to hang out and kind of keep to yourself. It's not too crowded. Touring on a bus really is the best way to tour. There's a front lounge that's got a lot of seating and usually a bench and a table. Your kitchen area, microwave, refrigerator. There's a bathroom, there's TVs, there's internet. And then the middle of the bus has all the bunks. So if you want to get away from everybody, you can just go in your bunk and go to sleep. And then there's a back lounge of the bus too, which is basically just a condensed version of the front lounge without the kitchen. Just seating and some TVs and some closet space for you to throw your stuff if you need to get it out of the way. And most oftentimes, unless it's a huge tour where they're carrying semi-trucks, the bus is going to be pulling a trailer. And since the bus is a lot larger than a van or a bandwagon, they can pull bigger trailers, allowing for more space. And more space means more gear and more production. But if you are in a band that needs to have a bus to tour because of your crew size and your gear, this year has been a wild year for trying to find one, because with all of these bands on the road at the same time, everybody's renting buses and nobody has buses to rent out. And there are tons and tons of tour bus leasing companies all over North America. Where I live in Nashville, just this city alone, there's at least 20 big name bus leasing companies that have fleets of over 20, 30, sometimes 40, 50 buses. And right now, Every single one of those buses is out on the road. And on top of all of that, we all know what happens with supply and demand. Prices of everything gonna absolutely skyrocket. And the same has happened with all of the buses in North America. And just to give you guys an idea of how crazy it is to find a bus, most of you know that I was supposed to be going out and working with Electric Callboy on their US tour. And I was helping out with production and tour management type stuff, and I had to find them a bus. It took me 17 or 18 phone calls to finally find a bus company that actually had just one available to go out on a tour. That's something that usually takes a phone call or two, maybe, if you're trying to find one bus for a tour. That's how wild it is right now. And the unfortunate thing with this is, due to finances or just not being able to find something, a lot of bands have just fully canceled the tours that they had planned in the US. And a lot of it are, European bands and bands from the other parts of the world that were supposed to come here. But it's not just that. There are a lot of American bands that are canceling tours that usually have no problem finding buses. I mean, I talked to a tour manager friend of mine just before I was starting to film this video, and he even said he thought I was lucky finding a bus even after those 17 or 18 phone calls. And before we bust into this actual estimate for a bus that I got, I actually talked to that friend who is a big tour manager for a big name act in Nashville. And I just said, what is your, usual guesstimate on how much you'd be paying for a bus? I've heard sometimes that $1,000 a day is your good ballpark estimate for renting the bus, paying the driver, stuff like that. And he told me he thought it was actually a little lower. He's like, I'd say $650 a day if you're on the lower end, maybe $850 a day if it's on the higher end. And that was kind of surprising to me because right now it's a lot more than that. And since I don't want to waste any more of your time, let's just jump into this. This is a real estimate that I got from one of the bus companies. I do not have their name on there because I'm not trying to name and shame or anything like that, even though it wouldn't be naming and shaming because this price that I got is pretty on par for everything else that I got from every other company too. But as you'll see, this breaks down every little charge that a band is going to be paying for that bus rental. And at the end of this, we're going to add it up and I'll tell you how much per day buses are looking like right now. So we've got our estimate on screen. And like I said, I'm withholding names. So any of the blacked out stuff you see is just because I don't want to put companies' names on the screen. But keep in mind, this is just an estimate. This final price that's listed on here for a band could change. It could be lower, it could be higher, but most often it's gonna be higher. So let's start at our first line here, which is our daily rate just for renting the bus. And that daily rate is $700. And as you can see in the quantity line, they charged us 25 units of that. So that's 25 days. But under that, you have your deadhead daily rate, 4 of those also at $700. So a deadhead is when a bus is driving directly to or from somewhere, usually at the start or end of a tour. So we've got 4 charges for that. So the 25 and 4 makes it 29 days. This bus is going to be gone from its tour leasing shop for 29 days total. And that's what the band is paying for, even if the band isn't on it for those 29 days. So then we go to our trailer rental. We needed a trailer to pull the gear, so we got a trailer. Being charged $100 a day at 29 days, which, to be honest, if a band has the space to store a trailer, they may as well buy their own because after 2 or 3 tours, you've pretty much paid for the actual trailer. So next line is going to be your main engine service. That is 15 cents a day, and our quantity there is $87.99. That is the estimated total mileage of the entire tour from start to finish. So 15 cents per mile at 8,799 miles is $1,319.85. Then your next line is the transmission service while pulling the trailer, 5 cents per mile, an additional $439. Then we've got DirecTV satellite service, $20 per day at 25 days. Now that 25 days, why it's that and not 29, because the 25 days is how many days that the band and crew is actually going to be on the bus. But $500 to have DirecTV for an entire tour. Seems like a lot. I doubt $500 a month is what that package is, but you do have to remember these bus companies have satellites on every single bus, not just this one. So they may need to charge that just to meet their monthly subscription fee. Then you've got Verizon Wi-Fi service, another $20 per day that the band is on there for a total of $980. Sorry, wrong line, $500. We'll get to that line in a second. In my experience, Wi-Fi on buses sucks. It really does. If you're in North America and you have a cell phone, you're better off just using your cell phone connection than the Wi-Fi because it's usually just a little hotspot router that usually doesn't do that good. Our next line down, IFTA daily fee. That is the International Fuel Tax Association. $20 per day. Actually, that's not per day. It's charged 49 times. I don't know why that specific number is like that, but that's your $980 that we were talking about. So now you're getting into your fuel estimates. Now, the fuel estimates for this tour were estimated at 95 cents per mile. I actually had some other estimates for this tour that were higher than that were about $1.30 per mile. This was around June of 2022. So that's when fuel prices were really going up and really changing. So people really didn't know what tours were going to look like when these buses were going out. But fuel is a little lower than it was at this estimate, but I feel like 95 cents a mile is probably pretty accurate. So we've got 1,199 miles for the deadhead for $1,100, and then 7,600 miles for the actual tour estimate. And that brings you to $7,200. So the tour is going to be paying about $8,300 just in fuel prices, like not even rental fees or driver fees or anything, just at the gas pump, $8,300. Then you've got your daily rate for your driver, $400 a day, pretty good daily rate. And he gets it every single day, whether the band is on there or not. So you got 25 days that the band and crew is on there, 4 days where they're deadheading. You're looking at $11,600 just for, about a month of work. That's a pretty good payday, man. I should have just became a driver. But then you've got extra stuff on there where they can make more. So we've got 3 times a double driver daily rate needed to be paid. That means they were going to fly another driver out to do a double drive because it was a long drive. And that doesn't even include the price that it's going to cost to fly the driver out. The tour is going to have to pay for that too. Estimated overdrives, another $400 per overdrive, and there was 8 of them. So that driver is going to make another $3,200. That driver is up to $14,000 for that month of work. And an overdrive, for anybody that doesn't know, is anytime a driver drives over a certain amount of miles, they get their day rate again. So if that overdrive number is 500 miles, if they drive 501 mile, they're getting their overdrive. Trailer tow rate, $50 to pull the trailer, makes another $2,000. Drivers up to $16,000 for that tour. Fuck, dude. The more I look at this, the more I haven't looked at this in a couple months, and now I'm like, I should have been a bus driver. Estimated hotel buyouts. So one of the things that we haven't brought up yet is that every single day that you're on tour, the tour has to provide a hotel room for their bus driver to sleep in. I know in other parts of the world, like on European nightliners and stuff like that, there are bunks for the drivers in there. But in the States, there are not. So you have to get a hotel room for them every day. If you don't, for any reason, if it's a weird place that you're in and there's no hotels around and they have to like sleep on a friend's couch or sleep in the back of the bus, they get a buyout. And there was a few that were estimated for that. That's $125 directly into the driver's pocket. Then we go to generator services, which was $375 for the tour, and then a weekly bus wash, $225 for the tour. And that's if it's only every week. Some bands and artists are very particular and they like their buses looking flashy at all times, and they'll tell their drivers to get it washed like every chance they get. So that price might be higher. Then you've got your weekly linen cleaning. The bus driver is going to change sheets on all the bunks every week and put new pillowcases and sheets on. Weekly interior cleaning. Bus driver is going to clean the bus. Now, they probably just put it on there as a weekly charge to make it easier, but most bus driver I've ever encountered is going to clean at least the front lounge like every day after they park the bus just to be nice and Bus drivers take a lot of pride in their buses, man. They want it to look nice for their band. They want their band and the crew to be comfortable. So usually I would see drivers cleaning every day. And then you get to the end of the tour. There are end of tour services, cleaning, generator service, bus wash, laundry. That's once the bus gets back to the actual shop it belongs to, that's where all of that takes place. But the tour is going to be charged for all of that work. Then you've got the tour trailer cleaning and clean out. The bus company is going to sweep out the trailer and make it look nice to give back to the rental company if it's not their trailer. Then you've got your payroll administration fee. To be 100% honest, I don't know exactly what that is, but my guess is that $5,400 is basically just going to the company. They're going to actually use that for salary for their office workers that are doing these estimates and doing all this paperwork. Then you've got a couple lines that didn't apply to this tour, but it was condo bunk conversion and star lounge conversion. So as we talked about, most buses have 12 bunks. A condo configuration is 8 bunks. And what they'll do is they'll take every 3 bunks, because there's a top, a middle, and a bottom, and they'll move the actual, backings, the bunks up to the middle, and it'll make 2 bunks. So there's a top bunk and a bottom bunk. They're just bigger and more room. And then a star lounge is when the back lounge of the bus has been converted into a bedroom. And you usually see that when it's like an artist, and usually not a band, like if it's like a country artist or something. And then your certificate of insurance fee, $50, bringing us to a grand total of $60,793.65 for 29 days of that bus being on the tour. 25 of it with the band and crew on it. Keep in mind, one more time, that is an estimate. Realistically, that price will be higher by the end of the tour because there are additional charges that we will talk about in our notes. First note is that the driver will need a single room each day or night of the tour, including any deadhead days. If a hotel room is not provided, the client will be charged $125 for a hotel buyout per night. We've already talked about that in our budgeting. But one of the things that's not on the budget is that actual hotel room. A tour is going to need to buy a hotel room for that driver every single day. So even if we're just talking about $100 per day, which is pretty cheap for a hotel room, you're talking about $2,900 additional on top of that just to put your driver in a hotel room every night. If catering is provided to the band, please add the driver. If a buyout is included in lieu of catering, please include the driver. So a buyout occurs when there's no catering provided at a show, or there's no after show after, the show gets done. A tour will give each member of the tour anywhere between like $10 and $20 for a buyout, which means they can go buy their own food or just pocket that cash. The driver is included, so that's additional money that the driver gets. Client is responsible for all fuel and generator supply costs. Fuel surcharges may apply dependent on diesel prices at the time of the tour. Again, fuel prices change a ton, and it's diesel. And diesel prices in the US right now are higher than unleaded and the others. So that price is going to change a lot depending on what the diesel prices are on your tour. And certain parts of the country are different too. So that's usually your biggest kicker on a tour that's going to change how much you're spending on the road with a bus. Client is responsible for all trip permits, state permits, tolls, parking costs. Tolls are probably the biggest thing in that one if a tour is just going to be in the US, because there are a lot of toll roads. Parking costs, probably not too crazy because most of the time the bus is going to be parked at the venue or at a hotel, and most good tour managers will talk to a hotel and find out if there's bus parking and what they have to do with that. But again, the big thing on here, please use this as an estimate only. Based on actual mileage traveled, extra charges may be incurred. And due to the new ELD mandate, drivers are not allowed to drive more than 10 hours at a time. If your routing requires any drives longer than 10 hours, a double driver must be brought in. Costs will be billed to the client. So again, as we talked earlier, if there are drives that will require that second driver, even if it's, 10 and a half hours, another driver has to be brought in. The tour is going to be charged for flying out that driver, and flight prices right now are not cheap. So that's extra money on top of everything that we see here. Plus you're going to have to pay that driver, but those were estimated in our budget here. So as you can see, they try and keep these estimates really close to what it's going to be, but there are a lot of different things that are going to change this price. And most all of the tour managers that I've talked to in the past few months have said that they've always paid more than their estimate came out to be. But it's a lot of money, man. I know a lot of people look at bands and buses as like, oh, look at these guys, they can afford a bus. I'm telling you, it's not that they're just trying to be fancy and want to be in a bus. It's that they need it for all the crew and all the gear that they're pulling. And a lot of times, these buses can be a huge financial burden on some of these bands. And one of the things that we didn't even talk about in the situation right now is that what happens if a bus breaks down? Normally, pre-COVID, a bus breaks down and another one's going to get sent out right away if it can't get repaired. The bus company will send one out, or they'll find another company near you to send one to you. But with no buses available, a bus breakdown on a tour could mean that dates start getting canceled until that bus is fixed, which again is a very stressful burden for a lot of these bands that are relying on these shows to pay for these bills. So if you ever wanted to know where your ticket price or your merch money that you're spending at a show is going, this is a big part of that, man. I would say merchandise money is one of those things that bands are like, if we can at least pay for our transportation with merch money, we've done a good job. So next time you're thinking about buying a shirt or a hoodie or something from a band at a show, keep in mind that this is the kind of stuff that's actually going to. You're helping the band a lot more than you probably really think. But to wrap this up, man, the availability of buses has become a huge issue in the music industry right now. And as you can see, with prices going up, it's not cheap, man. And some of these bands that may once have traveled on buses might not be able to afford it right now. And that's why you're seeing international and North American-based bands canceling tours, which is super unfortunate because I know everybody was super excited to get back out post-COVID, but this is just the reality that we're in right now. Now, hopefully, as time goes on and people start getting off the road from doing big comeback tours, this is going to start slowing down a little. And in another year or two, we're going to start seeing a lot of these companies having more availabilities, or some of these companies have bought more buses for their fleets because that is also happening because they want to accommodate these bands that are trying to rent buses from them. But as always, thank you so very much to everybody that took the time to watch this video. I hope that you found this breakdown somewhat interesting and see how much bands are actually paying for these tour buses. And who knows, man, next time you see a show, you might actually remember this and realize that the $20 t-shirt, I realize $20 might be a little cheap for a concert shirt nowadays, but you realize that the t-shirt that you're buying from a band is actually helping them stay on the road a lot more than you used to realize. If there are any other topics related to the music industry that you guys would like to see me talk about or cover, let me know in the comments below. I really do love doing these kinds of videos, more so than just doing reactions all the time. So drop me a comment. I'll keep them coming. But until then, you can follow me on a bunch of social media. @TankTheTech is my name on almost everything. And I stream on Twitch from time to time as well, so you can find me over there. But again, thank you so much to everybody for watching. My name's Tank, and I will be back very soon for another video.